My name is Tricia Cohn. I'm the Executive Director at Chai Point. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our new series, Partners in Ovation Communities. This will be an ongoing series that we hope to run for a few months so you can get to know us and get to know the people that also support our mission and are helpful in it and who can provide the best quality and best care along with everything that Ovation has to offer. Today will be our first guest and is no stranger to Ovation, and that is Rabbi Steve Adams, the Director of Pastoral Care at Ovation. I'm very excited to have him as our first guest. I want to ask you, hi, Rabbi. It's so
Hi,
good
Trish.
to have you.
Well, it's great to be here. It's an honor to be part of this.
Well, we're just so happy to hear it. My first question that I've been thinking about is, how did you come to work at Ovation Communities as the Director of Pastoral Care?
Well, before going into the specifics of that, I wanted to share a little bit about how I first came to be a rabbi, and then to talk about how that led to this position. When I was younger, a lot of people wouldn't know this, that I was a real medical science geek. And I'm very nerdy on wanting to learn about viruses and how they develop, how they affect things. Ironically, it's a virus that brought me into that interest. My 8th grade science project had to do with the study of the virus and how they're created. But when I was in college, I began to realize a few things. One is that physical well-being is one aspect of who we are as human beings, but the emotional and spiritual was just as important. And it was at that point in time that I decided to switch careers and pursue a career in rabbinics. And fast forward, after many years of serving congregations and serving on college campuses, that I started doing some part-time work at Ovation. I had previously done a lot of work with older adults in one form or another. And after about 5 to 7 years of doing some part-time work, I had the opportunity to come here full-time. Now, you asked specifically about the position of Director of Pastoral Care, which is a new position because in the past there were titles, the Rabbi of the Home. And when I came here, I was one of 2 rabbis. So I said, well, we can't call either of us the Rabbi of the Home. We have to look at it a little differently. So I talked with the directors about the possibility of creating clearly defined roles. And I focused primarily on the chaplaincy, pastoral care aspect of life here, certainly from a Jewish perspective, but in general. And that allows Rabbi Emmer to continue to work on Jewish traditions and supervision of kosher operations here at Ovation.
I find it so wonderful and fascinating that there's an Orthodox rabbi, as Rabbi Emmer is, and you as a Reform rabbi, and the partnership that the two of you have come together with. I think it's such an interesting and a great feather in both of your caps that you can offer both ends of the spectrum and come together and realize that your goal is completely the same. So my next question, Rabbi, is how does Ovation support the spirituality of our residents that are living here?
Okay, there's really 2 parts to that question. One is the Jewish spirituality, because being a rabbi, that's my training. And I always like to say, prior to the current pandemic, prior to COVID, we in many ways helped to facilitate non-Jewish services as needed here, but at the same time we would supervise Jewish worship services in one form or another. And that was the core, that and study, primarily the core of Jewish spirituality in one form or another. A lot of that helped to create a community. And since the onset of the pandemic, it's been a little bit more of a challenge. But from the Jewish perspective, we've brought the services to the residents. Going up on the floors and singing it first, and doing small groups of welcoming the Sabbath, finding ways to celebrate Israel Independence Day, using technology. Technology has been a great tool in that whole process. But at the same time, we are here to provide some sense of that community. And I do have to say that everything we do is part of a team. The activities team has been incredible through this whole time. I think in many ways they help us to provide for the spiritual needs of non-Jewish residents as well. Looking at sacred music of all traditions, programs that provide that and can provide some uplift for people. Some of the shows that we are broadcasting on our screens here that deal with travel and sacred places of other traditions as well. And just knowing that we all share this interest in spirituality. So we're trying to keep some sense of community, because from a Jewish perspective, that's really what spirituality is, a sense of community. And that's been a challenge, but we have found ways in small groups to maintain that sense that we're all one group of people.
And it's been really interesting how it has evolved over time of, things that when we first started, we, had people isolating and we were trying to figure it out and all the steps it's taken. And it's been a creative, incredible teamwork. And I really appreciate that input. How do you help to keep the residents and the staff's spirits up, especially during this time?
That's a big challenge. That is really a challenge. When the pandemic began, I think naively many of us thought, well, older adults have been through so much. They've been through the Depression. They've been through world wars. This is just one more challenge. They'll teach us how to live through this. But almost nobody alive today has been through a pandemic and faced the kind of isolation that this pandemic brings. And I think that's the hardest challenge, is the sense of isolation. So as we've been able to have some small groups gather, I try and make it a point to stop in to these gatherings, different places. And when I see that somebody's not around at the gathering, then it's an issue of trying to spend a little time visiting with them one-on-one to keep them going. I also want to give them a sense of hope, but realistic hope. I would never say, oh, everything's going to be gone immediately, and then have them be disappointed, as opposed to saying, this is a challenge, but look at what you have to be grateful for. You're somewhere where your food is always provided. You don't have to worry about that. Where so many of your other personal needs are provided. And to help them have a sense of being thankful for what they do have and how lucky they are to be in a place that's keeping them safe and providing for their needs, and giving them some little community to be a part of as time goes on. So I think that's the best that we can do, is these kinds of activities to keep their spirits up.
That's wonderful. And I think really at this point of the game, it's so important that people see the power of community. And I think our residents really feel that, our staff feels that, and that's been one of the good outcomes of COVID with this, is that they're in a safe,
Right.
wonderful environment.
And the only thing that I would add to that is, when I say a realistic sense of normalcy, I try and keep a sense of the seasons, aware times of the year. It's so hard to have a sense of that during a time like this when so much is closed off. And we've had to adapt how we provide for the holidays. We can talk a little bit more about that coming up, but that's something that I think has been very important, to allow them to see the things that are familiar, maybe in a little different way.
Oh, that's wonderful. So my question is, and it's another question of, here we are handling life situations, but there's also what happens when there's end of life rituals right now amidst this COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, that's a very tough time for so many people. I'm going to start with the first part of that, which is what happens when somebody is reaching the end of life, and what do we do? What do we provide for them in terms of allowing families presence or not allowing it? We have to weigh safety versus the whole issue of their emotional needs and the needs of the family. So I think we've had to make some very calculated choices with regard to that and balancing all of that. So that's one of the things that we've tried to be conscious of. When it comes to life cycle events, in particular funerals, just to share with you, it's not something we see specifically here, but that will affect residents here and friends and relatives. One of the things that we've had to do differently in the community as a whole is that most funerals are private services, no more than 10 people, including the clergy, at a graveside service. If they want more people involved, that's where we use technology. That's where Zooming the service gives people an option to be part of that. We've done the same thing with our memorial services. And it's very interesting that while we see that as a limitation, it's also an opportunity. And that's something we always forget, that people who live far away or physically unable to come to an event are now able, from the comfort of their homes, to participate on the computer screen. It does require the technological ability, but we found that families from all over are able to be together with others at a time like this. And so that's how things have changed. If families want to have a bigger gathering, they can do a Zoom Shiva, that condolence times, at a later period of time, later that day or at another day. And many are thinking that when it comes time to dedicate the stone, that they'll wait till then to do a bigger gathering, assuming that by then we're able to have bigger gatherings.
It's so interesting, and that was so helpful, because who would have ever thought that we would be Zooming funerals and memorial services? And there is a sense of intimacy of being to be much more inclusive because of the technology. And that's been really wonderful working with you on that too. So how do you feel that we can best support our seniors during this time of uncertainty?
Well, I'm going to suggest a few things that we can do and a few things that other people in the community can do, and I think that's really important. I think what we do to begin with is to try and provide that sense of normalcy. We've done that with Passover. We couldn't have a communal Seder, so we gave people Seders, services to share on their own. We brought them Seder plates to their apartments and their lodgings to give them a sense of the holiday. We had people in many groups, small groups, seeing the Israel Independence Day celebration on screens. Using technology is one thing that we can do. And I think that's very important, that people know that there is a rhythm to life. It hasn't stopped, even though so many other things in our life have stopped. Second is trying to find ways to create community in smaller groups. In a safe way, and teaching people that this is the new normal, that that's something we have. Again, I think that a sense of appreciation. Previous pandemics, they didn't have the technology to use to keep in touch that we do now. So we can avoid some of that loneliness using that technology. The other thing that I'd say is that if the larger community remembers people who live here, we've been very fortunate to have people write letters, share cards, adults and children both sharing cards and letters. And I think if somebody sent a video message, we could find a way to share that as well. So using, whether it's old school technology, pencil, crayons, whatever, or new technology, just to let people know that they're being thought of, they're being considered. Those are things I think would be very, very helpful.
I want to thank Rabbi Adams, our Director of Pastoral Care today, for being our first partner in our Ovation Partner Community series. We will be exploring for the next couple of months a lot of our different partners, so we can find out what they do and how they enhance the quality and our incredible community. So again, thank you again to Rabbi. It was very insightful. We enjoyed having you.
It was an honor.
And everybody have a great day. And thanks for tuning in to Partners in Ovation.